Welcome to the PM Talk Show. This is Pat Morris, your host. We're again out on beautiful Miller Lake, and we want you to be aware that November is Diabetes Awareness Month, and we wanted to bring someone on who is knowledgeable about the disease, and she has written a book entitled Your Life Isn't Over, It May Have Just Begun, and I'm very anxious to read it. And I'm talking about Professor Rebecca Hensley, who is a sociology professor at Southeastern Louisiana University. We want to welcome you to our show today.
Thank you so much, Pat. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you for being here. How long have you been a professor at Southeastern?
I've been at Southeastern since 2007.
Okay, a long time, about 8 years now, soon to be 8 years.
A while.
Yeah. And I understand that you've written a book about the disorder, diabetes. Why were you inspired to do that?
I was inspired to do that, Pat, because about 6 months after I got to Southeastern, I was actually diagnosed myself. I went in for my annual checkup, and the doctor flagged a problem, and he said, I want you to have a test. And when I came back in, he said, I was right, you're diabetic.
Okay. Was that shocking to you? I'm sure it was.
I can't even begin to tell you how stunning it was. What many people hear and what I've learned that many people hear is exactly what I heard when he said it. You're gonna die.
Okay.
You know, that's what I heard, and it panicked me terribly. I was horrified, and I spent the first few weeks walking around in something of a daze, actually.
Okay, well, I understand that because I went through the same thing because I'm diabetic as well. And that's the first thing I heard, because coming from a family with a disorder, I don't know if it was hereditary, lifestyle, or a combination of both, but I have the disorder, so I understand what you're saying right now. But I'm happy that you've written a book. What inspired you to write this book?
Well, like I say, at first I was panic-stricken, and I had to get through the semester however best I could, so I did, doing all the things they told me to do because I was terrified. I didn't know I was going to be all right. And at the end of the semester, I had to decide, okay, what do I do now? Where do I go from here? And I began to do the things they told me to do in a more conscious manner. Because of that, my body got so much better off. I felt better. I looked better. I was happier. I was basically just doing the things everybody ought to do, but I didn't, but don't do. And so over time, I got in such great shape that when I went in for my regular checkups, my medical people said, oh my goodness, you look wonderful. You're doing great. What possessed you to do this? I said, I'm doing what you said. They said, you are? Because most people don't.
Right.
So that was the first signal. And over time, the doctors all told me, you're like a poster child for diabetes, you know. And I thought, well, what's going on with everybody else? And eventually I realized that a lot of people are trying to ignore it. They're trying to pretend they don't have it. They're trying to just go forward thinking, saying, well, we all got to die of something.
Right.
So I might as well die of this. If I can't do what I want to do and eat what I want to eat and live the way I want to live, then I might as well be dead. And then the problem being, of course, that they go over and over into the hospital, they lose limbs, they go blind, and they put their family on an absolute tailspin, which is such a shame.
Right.
Because it's unnecessary.
Yeah. And you found an alternative pretty much to all that. Okay.
Your life isn't over. It may have just begun. Mine
Right.
has just begun. I'm actually in way better condition all the way around than I was 7 years ago when I was diagnosed. In fact, yesterday, day before yesterday, I actually went to the park, as I do about 3 or 4 times a week, and I ran and walked 4 miles at a real heavy clip at 69 years old.
Wow.
I'm telling you, I'm in better shape now than I was 7 years ago. Who knew that was even an option?
Right.
But here I am.
Right, and it's amazing, some of the simplest of things, if we would just adhere to them, it would do us good with the condition.
And I would not have done it if it hadn't been for the diabetes.
Right.
At one point, when my daughter was saying, I need to lose 10 pounds, and of course she's not diabetic and she's much younger, but she said, I need to lose 10 pounds. I said, you should do what I did. They just melt off. She said, Mom, you thought you were going to die. Most of us don't have that motivation. So it turns out that that panic and that, I hate to use the word, but terror, I was terrified.
Right.
That actually pressed me to do a lot of things, and it does keep me on track.
Okay.
On those days when I think, oh, I'd rather do this than go to the park. I'd rather do that, or I'd like to eat that. On those days, I think, how much would you like to have that? How much would you like to eat that? How much would you like to not go to the park today? Enough to risk all these other things. And of course, now that I see what it can be like, oh, please.
Piece of cake, huh?
Piece of cake.
Not literally.
Well, sort of. Better than a piece of cake.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. When you look at what you're doing now, insulin comes to mind right now. Do you still have to be on insulin?
I am on insulin. I was not for the first 5 years. In fact, for me, the way it unfolded was that they called me type 2 at first. I dropped about 50 pounds, became a size 4. I didn't even know there were humans that wore size 4. I'm no longer a size 4, but I was for a while there, for about 5 years. And with oral medications and diet and exercise, I maintained my pattern for about 5 years, and then it crashed. I could not, under any circumstances, get control of it, and I just had no idea. I thought, well, this is the end, and I did that whole thing again. Went to an endocrinologist who was a specialist, and he said, I think you might be a type 1.5. And I said, well, what is that? He said, there is a condition they now call latent autoimmune diabetes in adults. And it's like type 1 in that it can't be managed, but it is, and requires insulin, but it's like type 2 because it comes when you're later in life. So he said, you're going to have to be on insulin. In fact, they put me on insulin that day before I left the office, and I did another whole tailspin. So I entered a new time of being socialized to a whole new set of routines where I thought I was on the cliff looking over, and that turned out not to be true either. That's been about 1.5 years, and I've got it. I've got it figured out now, so I could add that. There's actually a chapter in the book on insulin because, like many people with diabetes, I was terrified that I was going to have to take insulin. I didn't want to do that. So I'd be going through the diabetes magazine, and I would see an ad for insulin. I would go, don't have to look at that, you know, and I would speed by it. It turned out it really wasn't that big a deal. It really wasn't. And now I have that. It's just medication. And now, actually, it added some options. So now I have a little more play in my wheel, which is a good thing.
Yeah, it really is. And then you're an expert on it now.
I am.
And you can do so in writing your book about it so that everyone else can experience, if at all possible, what you have gone through. A lot of the fruits and the veggies and a lot of things that you can do and you can't do, it turns out not to be so bad.
No, it isn't, and all of that is in there. See, when I first was diagnosed, I tried to learn all I could learn. I went online, I read books, I saw what there was, and by and large it was either very scientific or very complicated or so boring that I got what I needed, but I didn't get what I wanted, which was this book. And this is the inside information, the tips and hints that people who've been diabetic for a while figure out or don't figure out, or maybe don't even try to figure out. And I put it all in there in in ordinary conversational language, just like we're talking right now.
Right.
That's the way this book is written.
And it sounds like, it looks like it's a very easy read. One
It is
that,
an easy read.
You know, it's not all medically inclined, because when people look, I know when I do the big medical words that I really don't, you get tired of looking them up to see exactly what they mean.
Right.
And natural, to me, I'm finding out, is the better way to control my end of it. Many times people can get diagnosed with diabetes, do what they're really supposed to do, and the disease go away.
Sometimes that happens. Sometimes it doesn't happen with people with my condition, and it happens less than we wish. But it can unfold. It can actually go that way once you get the weight off. That seems to be key. Once you get the weight off, sometimes people reverse their condition and they can go forward. It's worth finding out.
Right.
Regardless, you're not worse off, and in the end, it is a doable process.
Right.
It's really doable.
Well, we're going to go for a break, and we're going to come right back. This is so interesting, but please join us. We'll be right back.
Look at me. Hey.
Raymond, look at Mommy.
Maybe the light hurts his eyes.
Maybe she's just not hungry. Maybe he can't hear us. Maybe we're not stimulating him enough. Maybe it's a phase.
Avoiding eye contact is one early sign of autism. Learn the others today. The sooner it's diagnosed, the better.
Welcome back to the PM Talk Show. This is Pat Marsh, your host. We have with us today our guest, Professor Rebecca Hensley, who is a sociology professor at Southeastern Louisiana University here in Hammond. And she's also written a book, Your Life Isn't Over, It May Have Just Begun. And it's a minute manual for managing diabetes. And I want to encourage you to go out and get the book, and you have something exciting coming up in a few days, right?
Yes, I do actually. I have the official launch is going to be Tuesday night, November 10th, at the Southeastern Louisiana University Library, the Sims Library, on the 3rd floor at 5:30. And you're welcome. We're even going to have some diabetic-friendly snacks. I'm going to read a little bit from the book and answer questions that people might have about my experiences and what it's been like, what it's like now, what it was like, and how I feel about it.
So I think that's how I'm going to celebrate the day after my birthday, is come down and see
Thumbs up.
stuff that I need to know that I
yeah.
may not already know, and I'm probably sure I don't already know, because there are a lot of things that I'm hearing just in what you're saying that I could be doing to make it more manageable for me, because quiet as it's kept, I'm afraid of needles.
Oh, I understand.
I really am.
I do understand,
I
and most of us are. And the doctor said to me when he told me that I was going to be on insulin, he said, "Now, are you afraid of needles?" Because, you know, kind of trying to figure out what he was dealing with. And I said, "Would it make any difference?" You know, I mean, I was just in overdrive. I thought, here I've just been told this life-changing thing, and where do I go from here? But like I say, you know, it reaches a point, and did rather quickly, that it wasn't the experience that I thought it was going to be. And as so many things are, you know, I mean, originally I thought it was going to be a nightmare, and it wasn't. And then I thought it was going to be a nightmare to take insulin, and it wasn't. And now I'm doing really well and happy about it.
And I can understand that frustration, because diabetes is a disease that's been discovered, and it was a lot of trial and error things to try to figure out what was the cause, what would spike it, what would make it drop, and what have you.
Yeah, each person is different.
Right.
And when you consider the fact that diabetes was identified as a condition 3,500 years ago, and we didn't develop insulin until the 1920s. So for a very long time, it was about make you comfortable and watch you die.
Right.
We're more fortunate than that. We actually have options. And now we're getting more and more and more. They're even working on transplants for pancreas. So, I mean, we're sneaking up on some pretty hardcore options in our future. But for right now, our quality of life can be actually as good or even better than other people's using some of the ideas in this book.
Right. When you think about children, and I think they call it juvenile diabetes.
Right. Type 1.
Do you think that the parents can purchase this book and maybe come up with some ideas to kind of help, like, what do you eat, what do you don't eat? And it's kind of hard to say because you're not a doctor, I realize
Well,
that.
it's trickier than that, and I did mention in my introduction in the book that I didn't have it as a child. I don't have a child that has it. This book is experientially driven. So even though everything in it is factual, at the same time, experiencing this with your child or having a child experience it is a different situation, and it's very it's hard for kids to want to be willing. Now first they do what they're told to do. When they hit those teen years, like everything else, that comes into play too, and they begin to say, I don't want to do this, I don't want to deal with it, and their parents are watching, trying to figure out, how do I get this to happen? But one thing's for sure, I have already discovered in marketing this book that the families and loved ones and friends, husbands, wives, girlfriends, boyfriends, of people that have diabetes, including people that have children with diabetes, are seeking this out because they are often at their wits' end. Right. They want their loved one to do well and to be strong and to enter their future happy and healthy, and they're hoping that can be true, and it can be true, but sometimes the person with the disease is resistant. This at least tells the family members that there are some options, some ways to present it. And some of them have asked me, well, how can I get my father or my mother to read it? They don't read very much, even though it's large print, they don't get to read they don't like to read very much. It is actually available not only in paperback, but it's available in Kindle, so you can read it right on your phone or right on a little Kindle reader. It's also available in audio form. So it only takes about 3 hours to hear it. It's in my voice, I recorded it myself. And so they can actually set it up so their older relative can listen and get the feel and hear my voice and be reassured that I'm not a robot and I'm not just fooling. I've really walked through it, and when I talk about how I felt, they know they can relate to it, and then they can get a better feel for it. So it is going to be helpful, I think, to families. And I hadn't thought about that because the Association for Diabetes, the American Diabetes Association, says there's 21 million of us, Pat, already diagnosed, with an additional 4,500 per day being diagnosed.
So
I
it's
didn't
an
even
epidemic
remember
proportion.
it is an epidemic, but I didn't even think about how many family and friends that affects. So we're talking about 100 million people are being affected by this disease.
So we got to do something. If science does not do it, then we have to take it upon ourselves to do what you have done. For instance, if medically we can do so. When you were talking about just accepting it for what it is, and I got to die with something, I had a very close friend where this happened to them, where when she died, the only thing left was her torso. Her sight was gone, her arms, everything, her legs were gone.
Unnecessary. So absolutely unnecessary. That's the part that eventually scared me more than dying, was it dawned on me, I'm not just going to die, I'm going to die slow. That's what I wanted to avoid. Well, it turned out I'm not only not dying slow, but I am having fun. And I eat chocolate every day. What
is the ill effects of having chocolate? Because I've always heard that you can't eat chocolate, you can't eat it.
If you eat dark chocolate, I found, and in fact, some of the things I talk about in the book are actually some brand names Now I know I didn't get anything for doing that.
Yeah.
No companies knew I was going to do it. But I thought, it took me years to figure out where I could get a really good chocolate chip cookie for only 17 grams of carb. And so if I eat a salad with grilled chicken, I can have a cookie with my coffee. I've learned how to do those things. It's all in there. And another thing I discovered was little dark chocolate with almond chunks, little nuggets, and I can have one of those 5 grams of carb.
Okay.
So that gives me a little dessert, right, that I can enjoy after I have my lunch or whatever, and for only 5 grams of carb, and I'm not missing out. So I don't walk around feeling like I've been put in timeout. Poor me, I can't have anything and they can have everything. It's not true.
Right. So it's a matter of counting your intake.
Carbs,
What,
carbohydrates. That's
yeah.
exactly right.
Okay.
There are some other issues, some of them highly scientific, some of them not as much, and a lot of it is in there. Because when I say that's an experiential experience in that book, I don't mean it's not factual, and I don't mean it doesn't include all the things that I learned that I needed to implement, because it's all in there, but it's in language that we get, so that we don't have to be befuddled, and we don't walk out of the doctor's office overwhelmed.
With your dictionary in hand.
With your dictionary in hand.
Right.
Yeah.
How long did it take you to write this book?
It's a good story because it took me a summer. It took me about 3 months. I thought.
That's all?
Well, I thought I had it. I thought I had about 30 or 40 pages written, and that it was only going to be 65 pages. But when I looked at what I had already written a couple of years ago when I first got this idea, I only had 14 pages. So I thought, well, so am I going to do it or not? I thought, yeah, I've got the time this summer while I'm not teaching, so I'll just get on well, it turned out to be 185 pages. So I burned up 8 hours a day for the whole summer.
Yeah.
But the result is this, and it will save lives. It will save lives. I know this. People have even asked me, if you could go back to before you were diagnosed and you were asked if you knew that if you had the disease, you would write this book and help other people save their own lives, would you be willing to volunteer to be diabetic? And I said, absolutely. Okay. Look at what is now available that wasn't available. It's on Amazon.
Okay.
If you go to Amazon, you'll find my Amazon page, which has a little video. My new website, RebeccaHensley.com, has all kinds of stuff on it, including the material on here. And I think it's going to be local at, I'm going to talk to the people at Bayou Booksellers here in Hammond and see if they'd like to have a few copies too, to take care of local people.
And certainly at your book's signing on the 7th.
Certainly at my book signing, I'll be signing them. I'll also be selling them at the November Starry Night on the 14th. And I'm going to check into the health fair at the McKinney Center
on the 14th. Right,
yes.
right.
Yeah.
That should be interesting to do. We are having such an exciting time, and I'm listening. I'm not doing a lot of talking. I'm listening because I want to get home and get into this to see what can I do that's going to help me feel better about myself, do what I need to do. Okay. Now, when we look at the 7th.
The 7th?
November 7th for your book signing.
10th,
I'm sorry.
Tuesday the 10th.
Tuesday the 10th. I'm thinking about something else, but Tuesday the 10th. And it's going to be on the 3rd floor at Sims Library.
It is, on the campus.
Nutritional, diabetic snacks.
Diabetic friendly, I call it. Diabetic
friendly.
Appropriate snacks. Absolutely, of course. And you suggested that a lot of these ideas are easy to access and are cost effective, and they are. Nothing in there costs a lot of money. Nothing in there requires that you go out and buy something to do.
Right.
So that's important for most of us.
Yeah, and in today's economy, that's going to help a lot.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So are there any closing comments that you'd like to say to the audience?
Thank you for the opportunity. I would like to say your life isn't over. It may have just begun. You can do what I've done, guaranteed.
All right, well, we certainly want to thank you, Professor Hensley, for coming. It was such a pleasure having you as my guest today, and congratulations on what you've done with
Thank
your
you
book.
very
And
much.
everybody, I'm sure, that will get it will be excited about reading it, and they will get something from it. That's the most important thing that can help them live longer. Again, thank you for coming. We look forward to seeing you on the 10th at Sims Library on the 3rd floor. You got it?
Thank you very
I
much.
got
Indeed,
it. I got it. This is Pat Morris, your host for the PM Talk Show, and we want to continue to ask us and thank you for joining us. Remember that knowledge is powerful. Knowledge does matter. Thank you and have a blessed week.